the only project there is, and that is to manifest the divinity that is already within. We are back, baby, with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. And we got toys. There's nothing wrong with toys. It's not what you do. It's what you do it for. And at the end of the day, our primary service we are called to perform for our community is to spread cheer and joy. It's not the primary service we're called for ourselves. That is self-inquiry. That is question everything. Don't take anything for granted and study, reflect daily, which I mention so often on the podcast. But in terms of for our community, it is about spreading cheer and joy. That actually just came up in the latest, one of our last meetings for the Venice Vedanta Club.
Join the club.
And it was so fun to reorient so many of the duct tape Frankenstein obligations we think we're under towards something so simple, so right at our fingertips, as spreading cheer and joy everywhere we go. It's beautiful. It's as beautiful and helpful as it is simple. And like I said, at your fingertips to do anytime after listening to this episode within your community, coworkers, family, best friends, acquaintances, the attendant at the gas station. It is always at our fingertips to perform that primary service. And a secondary service might be sharing wisdom that we might have gained over the years. Only if it's taken, it cannot be given. Within this philosophy, it is articulated explicitly that knowledge can only be taken. It cannot be given. So if you're here, you're taking it, which is great. The gas station attendant, you can give them some cheer and joy, perhaps, but you can't give them wisdom. It has to come from their own hunger for it. Well, within this episode, and something else that came up in a recent Venice Vedanta Club meeting was around a member of our weekly hangs here in Venice on Friday mornings saying that the enlightenment stuff just feels a little too ambitious, too grand of a project to undertake. And then their eyes start to glaze over when the topic comes up of enlightenment, and they like to go back to the practical manual for living well type of content, those principles within this philosophy. And they find themselves shirking from even the idea of enlightenment. Maybe it's just, like I said, too big of an undertaking for this lifetime. And it reminded me of an alternative articulation for a word that is now pregnant with so much infinitude, such a grand sounding project to undertake as enlightenment. If that is the ultimate goal, it's like, well, maybe there's some foothills to that ultimate goal that I should start on first before I start thinking about Everest. But two things came to mind when that question arose, and that is, firstly, it's not Everest. Sure, it is not often that people reach enlightenment. It's actually described as something that happens to one or two individuals a generation. But it's also described as simply and effortlessly as a needle passing through the petal of a rose. Simple. Almost as effortless of an exercise you can imagine. It still takes some direction, some intention. You got to line up that needle. You got to line up that rose petal. But it's described that simply, almost effortlessly, because it is always at hand. I'm not speaking from any experience with this. I'm just speaking from how this philosophy articulates it. Because, like I say, I'm just a philosophical jockey, playing the hits, playing the articulations of the sages, the masters, because it can be and is helpful in an incremental capacity, even if it isn't, boom, you get the ultimate goal after hearing one of the principles. But when it comes to this deep end of the pool, this ultimate goal of enlightenment, it's not to be thought of as Everest and this thing that will kill you trying to get there. It's more like a huge slide. If you do the initial work, getting on it, pushing yourself down, jumping into a text or something like a Vedantic treatise and just saying, hey, I'm going to commit to the first 2 or 3 pages, see if it speaks to me. Then the truth, it's like gravity. It just pulls you because there's a natural force, a natural pull towards it. And it's like I mention often, it is like surfing, where you got to paddle a little bit in the beginning, but then boom, you're on the wave and you're going with nature, cruising 100 yards, feel it almost near effortlessly. Or the metaphor that I use often, it's like surfing. Paddle a few times. Of course, you've got to put in a little initial effort. But as you get better and better at surfing, boom, 1, 2, 3 paddles, and you are gliding 100 yards, going with nature and letting nature carry you. That's what this path is like. Not every step so hard, getting more and more difficult as you reach higher and higher altitude, and you want to pass out, but you need to work through it like climbing Everest. The other thing that came to mind is this idea that it's super far off, that it is at the end of marathon on marathon on marathon, or super far away in terms of skill set like surfing, or in terms of distance like Everest. I love when I think about reorienting to the journey, the path towards enlightenment. I love thinking about the sage Vivekananda and his words that enlightenment is manifesting the divinity that is already within. Manifesting the divinity that is already within. It's a beautiful articulation on enlightenment because it gets rid of these massive, vague, hugely ambitious, now when we talk about it in our culture, hugely ambitious terms like enlightenment or realization, liberation, and it reorients it towards a few different things within that phrase. Manifest the divinity that is already within. The sages in this tradition, it's so beautiful that every word is so precise, so powerful. There's not a single ounce of wasted space when something is articulated. You get 1 or 2 of the words wrong and you lose half or more of the meaning. It's like the phrase. And these sages, when you meet a realized soul like Swamiji at the ashram, he will refine the words you're using. The ashram is built to refine the words that students might use, to where I remember saying a phrase, renunciation through action. And my teacher, Joseph, correcting me and saying, that's not exactly right. It's renunciation. And it was just it was in conversation. And I had said it mid-conversation. And after I got done, he said, by the way, it's not quite renunciation through action. It's renunciation in action. So these 3 words, it's not renunciation of action. It's not renunciation through action, but renunciation in action. And the other 2 can lead you down a wildly different path by getting just that 2-letter word wrong. And when it comes to something as big and grand and ultimate as enlightenment, it's helpful to have a few more words as pointers towards it, but also to know that each word is so damn precise to manifest the divinity that is already within. That gives us a couple things. It gives us the task to manifest, to bring forth. It gives us the direction within. And it gives us a sense of nearness. It's already there. A recent episode, we talked about how the divine is supreme, objectless consciousness, awareness itself, liberation, all of these terms, it is immanent and transcendent. And practically speaking, for this episode, that term immanent is so helpful because it's not something distant, far off at the end of a long journey. It is within and it is already there. So if you ever find yourself feeling like, I like the practical side of this philosophy, of these principles, but that enlightenment stuff that just feels like a bridge too far, it feels too grand to really entertain as an undertaking right now. Maybe this rearticulation can at least bring it a little bit closer to where it doesn't feel like, oh, that's a project for next lifetime. But maybe it's, okay, that's a project for after some initial preparatory work, or employing these principles in my daily life, but leaving that idea perhaps on the shelf, but a little bit more accessible with this rearticulation. Then it's a helpful reflection to manifest the divinity that is already within. A short phrase, for me at least, is a helpful rearticulation for what this whole project is about. And as Christ said in Gospel of Thomas, he said, bring forth what is within you, and what is within you will save you. Manifest the divinity. Manifest that which is already within us. That's what this philosophy and this project calls us to do. And at the end of the day, that is what this philosophy is all about. And as I playfully texted to my teacher, Joseph, one time I said, text him, let's get realized. And he replied so poignantly, there is literally nothing else to do. Man. Talk about being left speechless every time I think about that. Because what this philosophy, oldest philosophy out there, has been saying for thousands and thousands and thousands of years is, it's not just the end goal or the project at the end of all other projects. It's the only project. There is literally nothing else to do. And every attempt to do anything else is just a misguided attempt. The only project there is, and that is to manifest the divinity that is already within. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Daily Vedantic.